Good evening and welcome to the licensing hearing in respect of 16 Barbican Road to determine a premises licence. I believe you've elected a chair and that's Councillor Norman. Is everybody in agreement?
Great.
Okay, I'll just hand over to Councillor Norman now to chair the remainder of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Welcome to members, officers and participants in this hearing, and to those watching the webcast at home. The second item on the agenda is introductions. So to introduce myself, Councillor George Norman, who's going to be chairing the hearing today, Councillor Pearson, who's on the panel with me, and Councillor Mason, who for technical reasons is here but not visible during the meeting. Also present is Angela Bilby, who is giving us assistance from the Democratic Services perspective. We have legal representation, legal assistance from Victoria Wardby. We have a licensing manager, Leslie Cook, who is in attendance, and I think it probably is worth just running through the various representatives who are present. So if the legal representatives for the applicant want to introduce themselves and the applicant.
Good. I'm not sure if it's evening or afternoon, but anyway, hello everybody, and my name is Duncan Craig. I'm here to represent the applicant. Mr. Walker, if you want to.
I'm John Walker. I'm the applicant's lawyer, but Mr. Craig is going to be representing him at the hearing this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Koay is in attendance as well, I think. So yeah, that's good. In addition, we have Mr. Goodwin. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yes, I'm Paul Goodwin. I'm a resident at 10B Barbican Road.
Thank you. Mr. Sylvester?
Yes. I'm the director of the Bible College next door and have all the properties 4 through 11 Barbican Road.
Thank you. And Louise Patson, you don't have to disclose your address or any other details if you want. You're just here as representatives, but you're still muted, Louise.
Sorry. Hi, I live next door to the Chinese.
Thank you. Cheers. So we will move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations to make at this point?
None from me, Chair.
None for you. Councillor Pearson is shaking his head. I don't have any either. Exclusion of press and public. Victoria, I think usually we have a legal bit here. Is that right?
We do, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Yes, the exclusion of the press and the public is the usual point where you determine whether or not it's in the public interest to go into private session to make your determinations, and whether you're happy that the public interest outweighs that decision being made in private. And it's also a good point to remind you, Chair, that in relation to the procedure, the remote procedure, we've learned since the remote procedure has come into place over the last year, in terms of retiring to make your deliberations, whether or not you then intend to come back into public session to announce, or whether or not you intend to announce in writing. So once you've made the decision in relation to the public interest, perhaps announce to the hearing what your intention is regarding outcome of announcing the outcome.
Thank you. I would suggest to Councillors Mason and Pearson that we should retire to private session to deliberate and make our decision, and that rather than making everybody wait around for us to do so, we should notify them as soon as possible by written letter after we have made that decision.
Agree.
Agree, and Councillor Pearson's nodding as well.
Agree, yeah, thank you, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you. We have moved to agenda item 5, which is the minutes, which is to approve the minutes of the licensing hearings held on the 22nd of February 2021 and the 1st of March 2021. Are we good to approve those?
Happy to approve, Chair.
Happy to approve. Councillor Pearson, happy to approve. Excellent. I'm happy as well. Brilliant. So we come to item 6, which is the determination of a section 18.3a application by Mr Koay for a premises licence in respect of 16 Barbican Road, York. Would the licensing officer like to? Sorry, Victoria.
I am. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can.
Can we just check with all parties present that they've received the agenda,
Yes.
the agenda supplement 1 and the agenda supplement 2, so that all parties have all information before we start with the reps and the information from the licensing manager?
Brilliant. Thank you very much for reminding me of that. And apologies for missing. For those of you who are not aware, we have sent out 2 supplements to the published agenda that was posted to you all. And we are aware that some of you are not don't have access to email, or we don't have access to your email address. So it would be really good to know that every applicant, that every representative, everybody present has seen both of those bits. So I think we'll go round everybody actually for confirmation. So the applicant, your legal representatives, I'm assuming you have seen the second supplement, seeing as you've submitted it.
I certainly hope so.
Excellent, good, thank you. So I'll just go through everybody else. Mr Goodwin, have you seen both of those documents?
Yes, I have.
You have, brilliant. Mr Sylvester, have you? Yes, thank you. And I see from the chat that Louise Passon has as well. Yes? Yes, I'll take that from the chat. Brilliant. Well, in that case, we don't need to. We were going to screen share it so that those of you who hadn't seen it would have the ability to do, but obviously we don't need to do that in the circumstances, which is excellent. So Leslie, as licensing manager, would you like to present the application to the panel, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the application before you this evening is the grant of a premise licence for 16 Barbican Road for a Chinese restaurant, takeaway and karaoke bar. The licensable activities applied for are live and recorded music, performance and of dance and similar entertainment indoors, Monday to Sunday, 10 AM until 3:30 AM. Late night refreshment indoors, Monday to Sunday from 11 PM to 3:30 AM. The sale of alcohol on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 10 AM until 3:30 AM, with opening times Monday to Sunday, 10 AM until 4 AM. Non-standard timings relate to New Year's Eve and the start of British summertime. A full copy of the application can be found at Annex 1 of the report, along with the plan of the premises. Within the application, the applicant has described the premises as three-storey premises operating as a restaurant, takeaway and karaoke bar. This premises was previously licensed. The licence was revoked following a review hearing in June 2020, and a copy of the revoked licence can be found at Annex 2. The circumstances in which entertainment activities are not licensable can be found at Annex 3. As part of the application, the operating schedule submitted by the applicant showing how the licensing objectives would be met can be found at pages 32, 33, 34 and 35 of the report. Mr Craig, on behalf of the applicant, has today submitted a dispersal policy which has been published as an agenda supplement. I can confirm that this premise is not located within the cumulative impact assessment area and that the consultation process was carried out correctly. The Council's public protection section did make representations with regards to this application on the grounds that the licensing objective, the prevention of public nuisance, would be undermined by granting the application. Their representation can be found at Annex 4. Since the agenda was published, officers have mediated with the applicant and conditions have been agreed. An agenda supplement has been published confirming that Public Protection has withdrawn their representation and detailing the agreed conditions. North Yorkshire Police made representations on the grounds that the licensing objectives, prevention of crime and disorder, would be undermined by granting this application. During the representation period, the police mediated with the applicant, who agreed to amend their operating schedule and add several additional conditions. The agreed conditions can be found at Annex 5. The police have therefore withdrawn their representation. 13 relevant representations have been received from other parties. A list of the representatives can be found at Annex 6 of the report within the restricted papers. Their representations are predominantly based on the grounds of the pretend prevention of public nuisance objective will be undermined by the granting of this application. A copy of their representations can be found at Annex 7. A map showing the general area around the premises can be found at Annex 8. The committee has the following options when making your decision. Option 1, grant the licence in the terms applied for. Option 2, grant the licence with modified additional conditions imposed by the licensing committee. Option 3, grant the licence to exclude any of the licensable activities to which the application relates and modify add conditions accordingly. Option 4, refuse to specify a person on the licence as premises supervisor. Option 5, reject the application. That's an overview of the report, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Leslie. It is now the chance where all of you get to ask any questions you have of that report. And you obviously have opportunities later on to make your cases and arguments. So this is purely asking questions of the report that Leslie will be able to answer. So do the legal team for the applicant have any questions that they would like to ask?
No, thank you, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you. Paul Goodwin, do you have any questions at this point?
No questions at this time.
Thank you. David Sylvester.
No, not at this time, thanks.
Cheers. Louise Patterson. No questions in the chat, thank you. So members, Councillor Pearson, any questions?
Thanks, Joe. Just a quick question for Leslie, if I may. Just around the area, it's not in any like red zones, is it, or anything like that? Or it's not in any special zones for anything?
No, it isn't. It's outside the cumulative impact assessment area.
Okay. And can I ask, off to your knowledge, what are the normal sort of hours of operation of nearby sort of establishments selling alcohol in that area?
The closest establishments in that area are probably the licensed premises just a bit further around the corner on Lowther Street. I don't know exactly their operating times, but I would think that probably the latest in that area is maybe about 1 o'clock, 1 or 2 o'clock. But I don't know the exact operating times.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I put you on the spot there a bit, but thank you.
Lawrence Street, I think, is what you're reaching for there. But yeah, I would concur that that's probably broadly accurate. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Mason.
No questions from me.
I have a couple. Sorry. Just a slight sort of point of clarity, I suppose, as anything, that it would be useful to know what are we referring to the premises as through this application? Because I know that several representatives refer to it as the Regency, and the application refers to it as the number in Barbican Road.
On the application, the applicant hasn't given the premises a name. They have just put 16 Barbican Road.
Okay, So for our purposes, that's what we're assessing today.
Yes.
Cool, thank you. And I note and I ask this of you because the police aren't present, and I think probably licensing are the most appropriate people to ask in that context. Representative 13, which is page 113 if you're looking with restricted, or
what page did you say, Councillor Norman?
If you're looking at it through the restricted papers, it's 113, and the non-restricted is 139. There is a reference, point 3. There's a reference to the police being called to a session. Is that something that licensing had any awareness of or had any involvement with?
Yes, we did, because of the close working that we have been doing with the police during the last even closer working we've been doing with the police during the last 18 months. If there's been any concerns about breach of COVID regulations, and in this case, a premise that didn't have a license, of course, they have shared that information with us. So yes, there were complaints on that evening. The councils also got some phone calls on that evening as well regarding noise complaints from the premises. The police did attend but couldn't gain entry to the premises.
Okay, thank you, that's useful. Right, that's my queries there, answered very thoroughly. Thank you again, Leslie, that's much appreciated. So we now come to the applicant and the legal team for the applicant. If you'd like to present the case, I believe we usually set you 15 minutes to present your argument, and then obviously we will have queries after that.
I'm very grateful. I think it might be the first time I've ever been described as being part of a legal team, so thank you for that, Chair. This is an application for the grant of a premises license. These are premises that have some well-documented history. License was subject to revocation last June. It is right to say that the revocation was as a consequence of operational shortcomings, particularly in relation to the employment of illegal workers at the premises. And certainly public nuisance did not form a significant part of that decision. Mr Koay is well established in the local area. He first came to York some 6 years ago. He has a wife and 3 children. 3 children have been brought up in the local area. He's held premises licenses within the city previously, and obviously you may have some questions for him about that, but I know from speaking to him there have been no issues with any of those licenses during the currency where he's held them. And I would add to that it's absolutely right. I always say this when I had a hearing earlier this week that involved local residents. It's hugely important that local people feel that they are part of this process, that they have a voice, and that they are engaged in the decision-making process in relation to licensed premises. Licensed premises, the decision that you as a subcommittee arrive at is a balancing exercise between the legitimate business interests of applicants and license holders and the wider community, and that's why we have licensing laws. But I do feel compelled to say that given the amount of scrutiny that this application will have been under, given the history that I've just referred, it is absolutely worth noting on behalf of the applicant that North Yorkshire Police and Public Protection in particular, because clearly in applications such as this, they are the responsible authorities who are going to be most engaged with any such application, have both, following consultations with the applicant, effectively, well, they've withdrawn their application, their representations to the application, and that's hugely important because, as you'll know, the Section 182 guidance at 9.43 clearly states that responsible authorities are experts in their own fields, and that you should turn to them as a principal source of advice. That doesn't mean that the local residents don't absolutely have to have their say, and you need to listen carefully to what they say. But I just make that point perhaps more forcibly than I ordinarily would, because this isn't an application that could conceivably have slipped under the radar. It's absolutely right to say that the police and product protection would both have applied stringent checks and applied their minds purposefully to this application, given all that's gone on in the past. And what we're left with is obviously you have the old premises license at page 65 in the agenda pack. The hours on this license reflect those, and that's a conscious decision. I've spoken to my client about the hours, and the position simply is this, that he doesn't feel, I mean, he's trying to provide principally an outlet for students, that's not in dispute, and significantly so in terms of the Chinese students who come to this city. And he feels that the hours, anything less, it just simply wouldn't make the business viable. And so what he's done, in recognition that those hours, I don't think anyone, I couldn't sit here now and say that these hours aren't fairly extensive. He's had to undertake a number of mitigation measures which extend significantly beyond the previous license. They are mitigation measures that have been principally suggested by and agreed by responsible authorities and agreed to by my client. And I'll just take you through those because I think it's important that we deal with those. So if we just deal firstly with the original operating schedule is contained at page 65. Sorry, that's the old premises license. Forgive me on that score. The original operating schedule, I do apologise, is at page 57, in fact. And I would say that's a fairly carefully considered operating schedule. It's composed in a way that has seriously given consideration to the premises and the area that they are in. Then you've had representation of you've got the representation of public protection, and that's at page 81. And there are a number of conditions there that are specifically, and clearly public protection, their main task is dealing with nuisance, and so these conditions are particularly salient to this hearing given the representations that have been made. And many of these refer to, for example, last entry at midnight, issues dealing with the smoking area. I know that representations have dealt with the smoking area. There's going to be a direct contact manager for residents to contact the manager. I've found that's been useful in the past. It can sometimes diffuse problems and prevent them from getting out of hand. Restrictions on the external area, a detailed noise management plan that has to be devised before the premises operate, and it needs to be agreed. So again, your public protection's involvement with this application won't cease after today, should you be minded to grant it. It's incumbent upon the license holder to engage with your public protection in order that they're content with the noise management plan. There was a concern around the windows, and my client, I subsequently spoke to my client, and that's been addressed. Simply, there was an issue around some of the staff area, but we simply just agreed it's absolutely right that all windows shall remain closed, and so any nuisance, well, there shouldn't frankly be any noise emanating from the building, full stop, as a consequence of all the measures that have been agreed with public protection. And I'll just reiterate that these restrictions are significantly more exacting than subsisted previously. Now, what then happened was 2 days ago, I had a Zoom conference with my client, and I spoke to him about a dispersals policy, because one of the concerns that's been raised by residents, it appears principally the concerns relate to people when they leave the place rather than the noise coming from inside. And so I felt it was right in those circumstances to offer a further condition that related to dispersals. And so accordingly, I advanced that dispersals policy to my client. He agreed it almost straight away, having read it. And then I forwarded it this morning for it to be disseminated amongst those who are here today. Following that, I have had the opportunity to speak to Mr. Golightly, who was the officer from your public protection who made the representation, and certainly he welcomes the dispersals policy and the condition, the associated condition that's been offered. And it's right to remind you that any breach of a condition on a license it's not just something that can be viewed dimly by a licensing authority in terms of a review. It's potentially a criminal offence. If somebody breaches a condition on a license, it's carrying on a licensable activity otherwise than in accordance with an authorisation of the Licensing Act, and so they can be prosecuted for that. And so there are rigid and legal enforcement measures that can be taken if Mr. Koay fails to comply with these conditions. And so he's under no illusions that it's incumbent upon him to comply with these conditions. And there's certainly nothing to suggest, I mean, and it's absolutely right to say that every application is dealt with on its own merits. And that is enshrined in your statement of licensing policy. The same goes for the Section 182 guidance. And I think it's right to say on his behalf that his previous track record is something that you can quite properly take into account in evaluating whether he's going to do what he says, because ultimately he is saying to you today through me, I accept these conditions, I will comply with these conditions, and if I do comply with these conditions, then your public protection section have said that these are sufficient mitigation measures to allay any concerns that any local residents will have. So he's saying that today through me in a public forum. There are further conditions that relate much more to crime and disorder, which are Annex 5 at page 83. And again, I know you'll have read those carefully, so I don't need to read those out verbatim. Obviously, they cover the usual matters in relation to CCTV, staff training, refusals register, limits on the number of table covers in the premises, lots of restrictions around SIA to make sure that the premises are managed tightly and that sufficient controls are in place. And there are concerns around, obviously, the previous issues in the premises. So my client has engaged Peninsula, who are an agency who will advise him on employment procedures and policies. And that's something that clearly he's applied his mind to purposefully. And obviously, there is also a condition that's been offered, that's been agreed, excluding previous management from the premises. And that's absolutely quite right. So again, if that is breached in any way, then that is clearly a significant breach and something that would leave Mr. Koay liable as well. Bad people run licensed premises and bad operators run licensed premises, and that simply cannot be a bar going forward to other responsible operators coming in and running them in a way that's going to promote the licensing objectives. It is a permissive regime. Clearly, there are mechanisms in place. In fact, we're here today because of the mechanisms that subsist under the Licensing Act, that if people don't operate their businesses properly, then those licenses can be reviewed and revoked, and ultimately people have to pay the price if they don't operate their businesses in a way that A, is responsible, and B, takes into account the interests of the wider community. So, and those two matters, or two considerations, must dovetail with each other as well. And so I'm not sure I'm doing for time, but I suspect my time's coming fairly close to an end now.
For about 2 minutes more if you really wanted, but
Okay.
I would be...
No, I probably will use some of that up, but maybe not all of it. Just to say this, that this is somebody who is vested in the local community. He cares about the city. I know from speaking to him, he loves the city, and he very much enjoys being here, and as do his family. And what you've got here is an example of an application that was well considered when it went in, but perhaps wasn't as comprehensive as it may have been. You've had engagement with responsible authorities, and their suggestions have been taken on board, and they've walked away satisfied with the position. But the applicant then hasn't gone, well, that's good enough. He's then looked at the application through me and taken my advice on board, and considered the concerns of local residents, and actually gone further than was asked of him by public protection, and offered not only a condition around the dispersals policy, but actually a dispersals policy that is before you today, and will be something that will be a living, breathing organism. And look, it's obvious to anybody that the local residents who are here today have concerns about this place, and so it's not going to be in my client's interest to upset those people or annoy them, and it's very much in his legitimate business interests to work with those local residents to ensure that the concerns that they have are not realised. And I know from speaking to him that he is very sincere in his intention to be not just a part of the city of York or the wider community, but those people who live near him as well. And so for all those reasons, I would invite you to grant the application as it now stands.
Thank you very much for that. We now come to questions of the applicant. And the way this works is we go around as we have previously, and each of the representatives have an opportunity to ask any questions of the applicant. We usually say 5 minutes per applicant, per representative, to ask those questions. So, Mr. Goodwin, do you have any questions of the applicant at this stage?
Will I have another opportunity to give some complaints, or is this the only opportunity I have to speak?
You have an opportunity to speak after this. Sorry, I should have made that clear. You have an opportunity to speak just like they've spoken, and then we can all query that.
Okay. I think I'll wait for that then.
No, very well. Thank you very much. David Sylvester, do you have any questions of the applicant?
At this point, I'll just wait. Again, I'll wait till a little bit later. I have some thoughts.
On proceeding. Yeah, no, that's fine. Louise Patterson, do you want to ask questions? I know you put one in the chat, but if you could ask, if you don't mind asking it out loud for the record of the meeting, that would be useful.
Sorry, I'm just getting feedback from the speakers. That's why I was typing.
Okay. I can hear you all right, reasonably well. If you want to go for it, but alternatively, I can read out your question if you would like.
Yeah, I prefer that because it's coming back at me.
That's perfectly all right. And if you've got further ones, then put them in, and I will also ask them. If that's all right with the applicant and everybody involved, that seems to be the most sensible way forwards. So the Louise Patterson has asked which premises Mr. Koay has previously been the licensee of.
I think I'll let Mr. Koay tell you about that, because he can perhaps give you a little bit of background. Mr. Koay, do you mind just answering that? Are you there, Mr. Koay? He's still here, isn't he?
Yes.
Just unmute. Brilliant.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Can you say again?
Mr. Koay, can you just, obviously you told me the other day, but I think it'd be better coming from you if you just explain the premises that you've been involved in York.
Yes. It's a Mr. Happy and Chongqing Hot Pot in York.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. And there've been no issues with either of those, have there?
No issue. They're very fine there.
Good. And would it be fair to say that they're both similar types of establishments? And well, they certainly do food, don't they? And I know you're looking to do food here. Perhaps there's a bit more of an entertainment side to this one. Is that a fair comment?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Very well.
And there's another question from Louise here as to whether Mr. Koay will be residing at the premises.
Mr. Koay?
Pardon?
Will you be living there, Mr. Koay?
No.
No.
Do you have any follow-up on that, Louise? I think it.
Sorry, I just wanted to know if it was the actual licensee of those premises, because they're very much different to the one next door.
Mr. Koay, I think that's what you said to me the other day. You're the license holder for both of those, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Okay. Do you have anything further? I'm giving you more time than usual because I feel with the communication stuff it's necessary to. If you've got anything else you want to raise on that.
No, not at the moment.
Not at present. Very well, that's fine. Thank you very much. So we go to members' questions. Councillor Pearson, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, please. Thanks, Chair. So one of the sort of questions from some of the representatives was around people leaving on coaches. I just wondered, could you describe how the business expects to be used? Does the business expect for coach loads of people to be coming to enjoy the facilities? And how will, I'm just a bit worried that the dispersal policy didn't quite address that particular point. And I'm just wondering if we could add something else, or whether you'd be amenable to adding some extra condition regarding the management of coach loads, coaches and cars, perhaps some signage about engines being off and about being respectful. I appreciate you've already put some signage conditions in there.
Can we pause for a second? I noticed somebody is
Sorry, I was making a big entrance. Sorry.
Have we, Richard? Is everybody in the meeting who should be? You're muted.
Rookie error. I was just going to flag that we lost Councillor Mason for a bit, so it's probably just worth checking what he's heard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Councillor Mason, have you heard everything?
Yeah, no, I kind of switched off on my phone as I was coming through on this. So yeah,
you're coming through. Right.
Just
okay.
The coaches.
Brilliant. Go ahead, Mr. Craig. Apologies for that.
No, and I must confess, actually, and that's my fault. I didn't ask my client about this in advance, and I should have done, and that's entirely my fault. Mr. Koay, what's your anticipation in relation to coaches? Are you expecting a significant number of coaches to come to the premises? Because that obviously that's an issue that's been raised by one of the people who've made representations.
Yes, we put the sign on around the area already, like to mention the coach, the one park near the resident sites.
Right.
And then the coach will leave the tourists in the somewhere else, and then be better.
So are you saying that that any coach loads, they won't drop them outside the premises, they'll drop them elsewhere?
Yeah, they drop it and then they will go away
and collect them. I mean, and certainly, Councillor, if you feel that's appropriate to condition that based on what my clients just said, there won't be any issue with that. If you feel that's a an appropriate condition to add to this application should you be minded to grant. And I think that's right. I'm thinking on my feet here, but I understand people getting on and off coaches. The coach is allowed.
Yes.
People can be, there's groups of them. They're excitable. They're talking. So no, I think that would be a reasonable and proportionate condition to impose. I do.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you. Another very pernickety point. There's a bit about in the dispersal policy about checking for litter and broken glass outside the restaurant at the end of the night. Just whether that could be amended to sort of make sure that that's to be picked up.
Sure.
Very, very pernickety.
No, that's fine. Well spotted. Mistake there. Thank you.
And then I've got general questions around the volume of music, how that will be managed.
Mr. Koay, do you want to just turn your microphone off, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, councillor.
Sorry. No, just around the volume of music and how those levels of music will be managed. I appreciate it's been addressed, but I'd be grateful if you could just explain what measures have been put in there, and whether there's a bit about informing local residents of a point of contact if they do have any concerns, or if the music is getting loud or whatever, or they're missing out on sleep or whatever. Whether the premises would be amenable to a condition whereby perhaps every 6 months or every year, the local area, the neighbours are leafleted with a contact details with the fresh, so that anyone moving into the area or moving out of the area or new people will always have that contact.
Yeah, that's actually seems eminently sensible, actually, and I think that's fair. Again, fair on the local residents. I'm not taking instructions here. I'm going to take a flyer, but I can't see my client have any objections to that. And as I've said, I've already said that he wants to be well regarded in the local community. So I'll take a flyer on that and say yes to that. In terms of any noise, that's why that noise management plan condition is there, because that will require the premises to liaise with your public protection, and they've got to be happy with that condition. And certainly anything around music volumes will have to be absolutely central to that noise management plan. It's about ensuring that nuisance doesn't leak out the building. And so I would say I could answer that just by saying that anyone could put a noise management plan in a license. It's not just about that. The fact that your public protection have got effectively veto over it it should give you sufficient protection. Sufficient comfort in your own mind that obviously that they're aware of these premises, and so that's how I would respond to that point, councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. My last question is just around the hours of operation and whether the applicant feels that I think it's 3:30 a.m. that most of the things get onto. Why they feel that is necessary all week round, all year round, and if they'd be flexible on any changes to those hours. And I suppose the other question is particularly on the supply of alcohol until so late, when, as far as we're aware, the nearby pubs and restaurants have a much earlier cut-off time for the supply of alcohol.
I mean, certainly my client, perhaps it's an operational question, but certainly I've asked that question. Of course, I'm duty bound to understand what my client's business model is, and certainly he feels that those hours are what he requires to make the business viable. I mean, if you felt maybe half an hour less on the sale of alcohol might just stagger things a little bit in terms of people, then I mean that's a matter for you, councillor. But certainly, I feel duty bound to reiterate that your responsible authorities are content with these hours based on the mitigation measures that are in place. But maybe if you feel maybe a half an hour less alcohol might just stagger things a little bit. But certainly, anything more than that, I think my client would feel, the investment he's making and the commitment he's showing, it would be extremely challenging for him to make the business viable. So yes, that's Mr. Koay. Do you want to just perhaps explain to the councillors why you feel those hours are necessary for your business? You might need to take yourself off mute. And Mr. Koay, don't worry. I do these things all the time, and I'm always forgetting to put my microphone on or turn it off at the wrong time. So don't feel bad about that. It's difficult for all of us to deal with this unusual world we find ourselves in. But do you want to just respond to that, please?
Yes, because how to say like this, they can after the meal and then they need some entertainments. The student, a lot like the Chinese student. So if too early, if we, how to say, to stop serving, like no point like the normal restaurant. We don't need this entertainment.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot ask the nightclub and then shut down 12 o'clock. Understand what I'm saying? This is entertainment. It's like the karaoke. It's not a restaurant. It's a two parts.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Koay.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Mason, do you have any questions?
I do. I suppose one to follow off that one first. What time do we expect the restaurant to stop serving food or stop acting as a restaurant?
Mr. Koay, do you want to answer that?
It's a 11:30. We stop serving the food.
Okay. And obviously, I've been to a lot of licensed premises in York, but never to this venue. How does it kind of differ in terms of the operating model that was there before? Because I'm aware there was kind of booths there that were kind of karaoke booths or rooms. How different is this from the kind of configuration? Is there another floor full of karaoke booths, or how does it vary from last time or from when you had a license there previously?
I think, and Mr. Walker may be able to assist me, but I think it's broadly the same. Is that a fair comment, Mr. Walker?
Yes, it is broadly the same. There aren't any structural changes or significant alterations. It's basically the same layout and the same format.
Thank you. And then the last one, and I might have misread this, but I'm sure I read something in Mr. Golightly's comments about knives being sold. I don't know if I have misread it. Did I read it right?
Yeah, well, it was just.
I just wondered what the story was to get to that point.
It was just on there. It was on there in error, and it looks to me like you sometimes get that condition on off license applications, because off licenses can lawfully sell knives, and sometimes they don't. That condition's on there. Although I do question the force of that condition, because all it's doing is actually replicating another statutory requirement in any event, which conditions never should. But it was just on there as an error. I don't know if Mr. Walker could cast any more light on it than that.
I do think that there was one incident prior to the revocation of the license, but I think it was a one-off, and it's got nothing to do with the current applicant. It was just something picked up in the judgment relating to the revocation of the license, and we thought we'd just knock it on the head to make it quite clear. It's got nothing to do with us.
Yep.
I have to say, I think when I read that representation, it certainly was noteworthy to me that it was in there, and it certainly shouldn't have been. Just an error.
Okay, but if we wanted to, there's no point in putting conditions on there about no sale of knives.
No, there won't be any knives sold, and absolutely not. No, absolutely no, 100%.
Thank you. Yeah, that's everything from me. Thank you, Chair.
Just to add clarity, because I think I have previously sat on a committee that may have discussed a Regency case in the past. I believe that it was for the other premises that was owned at the time by the Regency chain, which does have an off license attached to it, or did have an off license attached to it. And we had a long discussion about whether it was a licensing matter, I seem to remember. Anyway, yeah, I have some brief queries, if that's all right. Firstly, I note that there's discussion, quite a lot of discussion backwards and forwards in various bits about smoking areas and a designated smoking area out front being I know, quite clearly demarked, which would imply to me some form of fencing, for want of a better word, small temporary, kind of stuff you get outside nightclubs. My knowledge of the exterior of the premises is that there probably isn't sufficient room to put something like fencing on the pavement out the front of the premises. Could we have clarity as to where exactly we're talking about for the smoking area?
Again, I'll ask Mr. Koay to answer that one. I think he's better placed to answer that than me. Where's the smoking area going to? Mr. Koay, have you got the agenda pack in front of you?
No.
Okay, you may need to describe it then. Where is the smoking area? Mr. Koay,
Yes.
Is it at the front of the premises?
In the front
Right.
door. Front door. Can
Right.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can. So if you come out of the premises, are you coming from inside to the pavement?
Yes.
Is it to the left or to the right?
Outside. On the left.
On the left, right, okay. So I think based on what Ms. Koay just said, where it says dining hall, I think it's in front of there. I think it's right to concede. It's not, I mean, look, a lot of licensed premises have to improvise when it comes to smoking areas. That's just the reality of where we are. I suppose less people are smoking now, but people, there still are a significant number of people who smoke. And I think it's also right to say in the Chinese community, probably a larger number of people smoke. I have to concede that. So, but that's where it would be located.
I think I do have concerns about the width of the pavement there and the speed of the road alongside. So, yeah, I think it would be, if there are any mitigating comments on that, it would be useful to hear them. But I suppose you are right that there are other premises with similar issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, very well. I note on page 58, there is a thing which, again, I think relates to previous iterations, shall we say, that no staff will live, sleep in cramped conditions. Does that mean there will be staff living and sleeping on premises in non-cramped conditions?
Mr. Koay, are there going to be any staff living at the premises?
No.
No.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a useful clarification. Much appreciated. And lastly, I partially raised this because I see that Louise has mentioned it in the chat, and I had some more clarity really on the coach party stuff. That the exact drop and pick off point would be useful from her perspective. But also, I just wanted to clarify: are these coach parties of people who are going into the restaurant, or are these coach parties of tourists? Because I understand there may be some overlap, but it strikes me as if what we've heard so far from the applicant is this is mostly an application for a student bar in the business model that he's talking about.
Yes.
Not a tourist bar.
Who, Mr. Koay, who will be on these coaches? Will it be students coming from halls of residence together in a coach?
No. It's the daytime, the tourists.
Right. So it's Chinese tourists in the daytime. Right.
Yeah, they visit York, and then on the daytime they're having lunch, and then they will go.
Right.
Okay. So from our perspective, I don't want to fill your words with mouths, your mouth with words, Mr. Craig, but from our perspective, that isn't necessarily a licensable activity, is it?
No, but it's also right to say that new coaches have the capacity, coaches of people who are arriving at the premises, and therefore it's in association with the premises, do have the potential to cause nuisance. And so there's nothing wrong with having a control measure. I don't know if you know where the drop-off point would be, Mr. Koay. Would you know where that would be?
Near the Stay City there. Near the Stay City Hotel there. They got the one, right, like the big for the coach parking.
Okay, so I mean, if you want to word a condition along those lines,
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's in the day, if it's away from residential properties, that's got to be a good thing, I would say.
Yeah, they have the co-op hotel that the resident city there near the Barbican Center there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for benefit of councillors who are not too aware of the area, that's quite a distance, really, isn't it, Mr. Quay?
You know better than me, but Mr. Walker's nodding, and that's good enough for me. He knows the area far better than I do. I'm very grateful.
It's several hundred yards away. Yeah.
Okay. Do I have anything else? Oh yeah, it would be interesting to hear. I asked licensing officers about this incident over Christmas. I don't know if the applicant has any comment on that, or you have any comment on that.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, it certainly didn't involve my client in any way. I don't know if you want to confirm that, Mr. Coy. This incident at Christmas, where there was allegations of a party going on. Do you know anything about it at all?
Christmas.
Yeah.
We close on Christmas Day.
Right.
I think we will be closed on the Christmas Day.
No. You misunderstand. Sorry, I've not made myself clear. One of the representations from one of the local residents suggests that there's an allegation that there was some party going on at the premises last Christmas. Do you know anything about that at all?
No.
Right. And so I mean, you've not been involved in the premises, so presumably you can't assist as to that. No. Is that right? Is that right, Mr. Coy? You can't. You don't know anything about it at all.
No,
Yeah.
no. Yes. No.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that indeed. So we now move on to the sections from representatives. So this is where the other people here have an opportunity to talk for 15 minutes, and then we'll have questions for 5. Are all councillors feeling energised and happy to keep going? Or would you like a break?
I'm happy, Chair, but if we're going to hear from 3 people for 15 minutes and have questions, it might be worth breaking now, just to maybe mean we can go for the long run after.
I'd appreciate a quick personal.
Appreciate a quick comfort break. Very well. I think that is eminently wise. Should we say is 5 minutes sufficient, or would you like 10?
That's fine.
5 minutes is sufficient. Very well. We will convene again at 10 to 7, and the meeting will adjourn until then. If you could turn your videos off. Hello, everybody. Hopefully we are all back and in attendance. And thank you for, all of that. We now, as we say, previously go through the representatives, and everybody has the opportunity to ask questions of that. So, Paul Goodwin, would you like to go first? Say you have 15 minutes.
Yes, I would. I have, I guess I'll start out with one comment. We have in front of the flats 5 through 11, there's a small car park there. Usually can fit about 5 cars. And just thinking about the coaches, up until the time of the pandemic, coaches were regularly stopping right there, dropping off patrons for the restaurant next door. And oftentimes, with the window open, the noise is just right outside my window. It will get quite loud. And actually about 3 years ago or so, my car was parked out there and it was actually hit by one of the coaches. I still have blue paint on the bumper on the back. It was from Minsterly Coaches. And I never got a police report. The driver assured me that he would pay me the money to get it fixed, and he never did. And it took a while, and I just gave up on it. But it was one of the coaches that parked directly in front of the flats, even though there's a sign there that says that is not allowed. So it would be a bit of a concern, even though it was mentioned that the coaches would be parked down by the Stay City. I don't know if that would happen or not. So that would be one concern. Also, living, it's already quite noisy. I usually get woken up, especially in the summertime. It's been quieter during the pandemic, but just with the normal people who are walking by, there's a lot of noise that's already being generated. There are drunk people walking, university students and otherwise, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, yelling, that sort of thing. Vomiting, things that you would expect, leaving beverage containers on the windowsills and that sort of thing. People parking in the car park down below, smoking and having loud conversations already. And as was mentioned previously, with the plan for a smoking area outside of the restaurant, I just can't imagine that being a quiet sort of thing. I can't imagine that the noise level would be mitigated in any significant sort of way. So there's already quite a lot of, I guess, antisocial behavior, nuisance, that sort of thing, just living there as things are now. And to have a new sort of a license, it would just bring more sleeplessness to the neighborhood. It would just bring more things that aren't necessary. So.
Thank you very much. We go through everybody, and if they want to ask any questions of you, they can do. That's the next bit. So David Sylvester, do you have any questions of Mr. Goodwin?
Well, Paul already addressed some of the issues that we've been facing there over the years. And one of the big ones is the noise and just the urinating on the wall of our buildings over there on the side between the buildings, and just generally just making
yeah, sorry, just for clarity, so you'll have an opportunity to do what he's just done in a minute, but now is if you have any questions for him. Does that make sense?
Right. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but
no. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's because it sounded like Paul was sharing already, is sharing the.
Yeah, if you've got, if you want to ask questions that will let him draw out more things, then that is fine. But
yeah, I mean, one of the questions would be, because we've had such an issue with the coaches, what kind of assurance would there be that the coaches would actually be parking in the designated parking area? Because I have spent years going into the restaurant, talking to the coach drivers and telling them this is a no parking area, and they just do it anyway. And so I'm just, what kind of assurance would we have of any of these things actually happening?
Okay.
That would be a question.
Yeah, that's more. I think that's more of a question for the applicant. But
I'm happy to answer that, Chair. I know it's slightly out of turn, but if you're content that I answer that, because
go on quickly.
because I'm best placed to answer it, frankly, on behalf of the license holder. Well, all I would say is that on the previous license, there was no condition relating to the parking of coaches, and it will be incumbent upon the license holder, should the license be granted, to comply with that condition. And if he fails to do so in a reasonable way, I mean, there's a due diligence defence under that section, but if he fails to comply with that condition, then there are sanctions he will face. And so that's the assurance I can provide to you, that somebody who is a responsible person and responsible operator in the city will be charged with ensuring that the coaches don't park in that way, and it will be his job to manage those coach drivers and to manage that situation. That will be his responsibility as license holder. So hopefully that at least answers your question for you, sir.
Well, I can address more later on when we have the
Yeah, if that's all right. I mean, if you have, because the process is a bit complicated sometimes, if you have further questions you want to ask the applicant at this point, I don't have any particular objection to that, but up to you.
No, I can just wait until we.
Cool, that's fine. No worries. Brilliant. Okay, so Louise Patterson, do you have any questions of Mr. Goodwin specifically at this stage?
No.
Not particularly. Brilliant. Thank you. So we go. I do apologise. I should have asked the applicant if you had any questions first, I think, shouldn't I? I do apologise.
You know what? I can just about handle that, being in the wrong order on the questions front. Don't worry.
Please do go ahead.
No, there's a lot of representations, and I never get precious about batting orders, so don't worry. I have no questions at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Councillor Pearson, do you have any questions of Mr. Goodwin?
Thank you. It's just a question, really. We've obviously had a fairly lengthy exchange of questions and answers with the applicant this evening, and I just wondered if you felt that some of the things we've discussed in terms of additional conditions would address the concerns that you have, or if there are still concerns that you have over and above what has been agreed with the police, with the council, public protection, and with potential additional things that have been requested this evening around coaches and around volume and all the rest of it. So do you understand the question? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, well, I understand that there's an attempt to address the issue of smoking, but I've made my expressed my concerns regarding that. It's just going to be another place where noise is made. There's no real space, as was mentioned previously. There are the front steps, and then there's the pavement that's right there. There's no real space for smoking, and it's inevitable that it's going to turn into something that's noisy, regardless of how you do it. And again, concerning the coaches, I guess it remains to be seen whether that's going to continue to be a problem or not. And the noise, as it's also been mentioned, the other establishments in the area, nothing is open later than midnight in terms of selling alcohol. And this is going to be 3-4 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And a half an hour is not going to make very much difference. It's just going to create more noise and more nuisance in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Thank you. When you were chatting earlier, Mr. Goodwin, in your kind of remarks, you gave quite a lot of general examples, I suppose, of antisocial behaviour living in a city centre, and I've lived in a city centre before, and I understand, the problems you get from living close to that environment. I just wondered, obviously, the business his plan is to kind of operate and be laid out in the same way as it was before. And I wondered if you've got any kind of, obviously we touched on smoking and coaches, but obviously around things like noise, particularly more noise from the venue in terms of sound. I just wondered if you've got any comments around any of the issues you thought were kind of pertinent around venue noise opposed to kind of people coming and going, if that makes sense.
I suppose that not a lot of noise necessarily if all the doors were shut and if all the windows were shut. I suppose that there wouldn't be an excessive amount of noise, but I don't know. That remains to be seen, depending on the activities and the amount of alcohol that is being consumed. But notwithstanding, it will generate, the main thing is the noise of the people coming and going, and it's going to generate more of that no matter how you slice it or dice it.
And again, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I presume you as a resident would be expecting that maybe more on a Friday, Saturday night and less so during the week. Would that be a fair observation?
It would be a fair observation, but it can get noisy even on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, but in terms of what if a balance had to be struck by the licensing committee, you've probably got more of an expectation that you would, living near to a licensed premise, it would be, you know, you would expect more disturbance on those weekend days, Friday, Saturday, than you would during the week, or you would prefer it that maybe during the week it would be quieter, and on a weekend you would accept that maybe there would be some more noise.
Yes, I do, but I do enjoy to sleep 7 nights a week also.
I know that.
So,
I know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have just sort of a brief kind of would be good to hear you expand a little more. It sounds to me as if you've lived next door to the premises for a while, and it would be interesting, I think, to know, have you marked any change between before the license was revoked on the previous premises, how it's been recently?
Yeah, it's hard to tell with COVID, because the last year everything's been quite a little bit quieter, and one of the things that I noticed is that once the virus hit, everything seemed to get quiet, and it was quite nice, actually, quite peaceful in a lot of ways. I can't really tell, other than that was the dropping off point. And I think probably more of the concern is going into the future with the new scenario.
I should have thought about that myself. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, because the noise has been picking up since the lockdown began to ease. It's starting to get noisy again already.
Okay, and
just
so
back to normal.
Just for sort of further clarity, I guess, on this, you prior to COVID, there were noise problems from your perspective. Things were noisy. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Okay. Brilliant. So I don't have anything further. We will move on. Mr. Sylvester, David Sylvester, would you like to speak briefly to the committee?
Yeah, I mean, Paul has addressed some of the same concerns that I have, and I mean, let's face it, we're still closer to the city as far as noise goes, and so you're going to get a lot of traffic down that area anyway. But it definitely is amped up by next door, and there's been, you know, there's just with everything they're doing there, it has, you know, like I mentioned, there's the urinating on the wall of our building, and the smoking and the talking, and you know, that's all going to escalate, and to be having that outside your door up until 3:30 or later in the morning, I think it's just, for a residential area, it's not, you know, it's not really thinking, in my opinion, it's not thinking at all much of the community there that lives there. And so yeah, that's you know, that's one of the things. I mean, Paul addressed like I said, the coaches, even though that there would be you know, the parking area in front of the State City Hotel. Right now, the problem that we were having is parking right in front of the flats that is just for residential parking, and it does have a sign that says no coach parking, and yet that has been breached numerous times over and over again. So they're really, even though it might you know, be in the legalities of it, they weren't adhering to it anyway. So that has been a big problem, is that the coaches pull up, take up all of the residential parking, and disregard anybody really, so you know, anybody's you know, opinion. They just do what they want to do, and they'll sit there until people are done eating in the restaurant, And so, so yeah, that's, those are a couple of things. I think one of the points as far as needing to be open until 3:30 in the morning to make it a viable business, it's already been somewhat of a viable business before they were open until those hours. So I don't know if that's really a valid point of needing to be open that late, but you know, yeah, so for a community really to be open those hours, and then to have people drinking the whole night through, and then to expect them to adhere to all of the things in the dispersal policy and things like that. It just seems very optimistic. At that time of day, people aren't really thinking about abiding by all the dispersal policy rules. They're just doing whatever they want to do. So I think it's kind of dreaming to think that they're going to uphold all of those. And my experience there is, even though there might be some legalities that you can try to enforce, you know, it just seems like you're fighting a losing battle often. And so I think, yeah, it all sounds good on paper, but the reality of it is it's probably not going to look that great in practice. So that's some of my thoughts that I have. And we've owned the property next door, the whole row of flats. We've owned that since 2001. So yeah. And we also have a church building that meets there. So yeah. Those are just my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, that's appreciated. And we will now go around questions if that's all right, so that there may be more stuff that we can talk about. Mr. Craig, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
No questions, thank you. Mr. Goodwin, do you have any questions?
No further questions.
Cheers. Louise Patterson, do you have any questions of Mr. Sylvester?
No.
Cheers. And we then go through councillors. Councillor Pearson.
Similar question for you, Mr. Sylvester, that I asked Mr. Goodwin is, and I think you've addressed this already in some of what you've said, is do you feel that some of the measures and mitigations that have been put forward will address the concerns entirely, and what is it that's sort of over and above the conditions that are already being sort of suggested that you would like to see or that you have concerns about?
Well, I think for me is you can put whatever you want to put on paper, but it actually happening and practically is often two different things. So anybody can say whatever they want to say on there, but what we're living with is a lot more noise, a lot more, it's just it's not conducive to, really, in my opinion, to residential area, no matter how you slice it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason, do you have any questions?
Thank you. You mentioned, issues like urination. I suppose what is it that's making you think it's people from this premise particularly that are undertaking those activities?
Because they're coming out of the restaurant, waiting for buses and going right to the wall and doing it.
Okay.
So, you can see them.
No, that's interesting. It was a different angle as what I was thinking. So these are people, because obviously when we've talked about coaches, we've been told it's kind of during the day. So you're saying that isn't what you're seeing. You're seeing coaches or late night coaches?
No, well, the coaches are generally during the day, but people are waiting for taxis and stuff. And so while they're outside waiting for taxis and stuff, or talking or just sitting around the buildings and stuff, that's the only place to go if they can't go into the restaurant. So
okay, thank you. And then I suppose the other question we were saying about noise from inside the building, is that something actually you feel is or is well managed, or isn't so much an issue, it's more the people noise?
Yeah, I think it's more the people noise. I think that's been initially when the license was first issued in the very beginning, that was a real big concern of ours, was the volume of noise, and it hasn't been what I thought it would be. So that hasn't really been too much of a problem. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
No more questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have a couple. Have you ever had a contact at the premises before? And have you had challenges in getting in touch before with problems and concerns? Just because you mentioned previously, you know, issues with being able to go in and talk about disbursement things.
Yeah. I mean, generally, I just go in and speak to the manager. And if I have a problem, you know, if the coach is there and blocking up all the the parking spaces, I just either speak to the coach driver, and if they don't move in, then I'll move on. Then I'll go speak with the manager there in the restaurant. But often by the time the whole thing gets resolved, the bus driver is about ready to go anyway. But you've taken about half hour of my time and a lot of dealing with that, an issue that I really, and I've done, well, at least 20 times, you know, I'd say legitimately 20 times or more. And so it's just a hassle, something that you don't want to have to deal with all the time. And it's a frustration. Yeah, so.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's appreciated. I also know in some of the objections with representations, there's discussion of a curfew on weeknights. What time is that, out of interest?
I'm sorry, I missed the.
Sorry, in some of the objections, there's discussion or mention of a curfew during weekdays. Is there a time for that? Just sort of interest of working out when times are happening for everything.
I mean, well, as far as I mean, they're proposing 3:30 in the morning, right? So are you asking me what would be a good time for something?
Sorry, no, I meant with regards to the Bible College.
Right. Well,
am I misreading the bit? No worries if I am.
I mean, they're residents there. They're living there, so they're, you know,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's all right. That's perfectly all right. Yeah, and I think we take your comments on board, which I think are about, you know, how enforceable are these conditions is kind of what you're talking about, isn't it? How much can the council have on that? Which I think is something that we can pick up in a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fab. So then, Louise Patterson, do you want to speak to the committee?
Yes. The last licence was granted for anyone who drank there had to eat. So people weren't just going there to get drunk. And also the smoking area, the path is very, very tight. And when they all stand out there, I've walked past loads of times and had to go on the road with my dog. It's a blind bend. And I think that people coming out at that time in the morning drunk will be walking straight into the road, and there'll be a fatality very soon. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much. If it's all right, we'll go through questions and queries. Mr. Craig, any queries on that?
Sorry about that. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Cheers. Getting the bits of paper lost around now. Mr. Goodwin, do you have any queries or questions?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Mr. Sylvester?
Sorry, thought I better plug in before I disappear here. But, yeah. No questions. Thanks.
No questions. That's fine. Thank you. So Councillor Pearson, do you want to raise?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, same questions as well from Mrs. Patterson. Just around what you've heard this evening around the potential conditions, noise management plans, etc. Is there something you feel that should go above and beyond what's being proposed in terms of conditions on the licence? Does that make sense?
No, can you just
Want me to repeat the question?
explain what you mean? Sorry.
Yeah, it's just around, we've obviously had conditions proposed by the police, conditions proposed by the council's public protection department.
Right, yeah.
And we've also talked about potential other conditions that we might attach to the licence. I just wondered if you felt that there were other things that we hadn't talked about or that you'd like to see added to the licence conditions.
Yeah, the conditions, obviously living next door and the residents here. I'd like a condition to say that they're not going to be outside my front door as they have been, and if the smoking area is too small, that they come round here. I've actually had them under my front porch when it's raining, eating the half of oranges that they've been given at the end of the meal and leaving them all outside my front door. Plus, it makes my dog bark. I'm now working from home full time, which is going to be a nuisance if it's going to be all day from 10 o'clock. The other condition is that they make some kind of thing that they're not coming round and parking in our car park, which is often done. And the condition that the coaches do not stop here. I have been verbally and nearly physically assaulted by coach drivers before. One tried to headbutt me when I asked him to move. They left their engines running, my kitchen's at the front, the fumes come in. So I know the coach business is nothing to do with the licensing, but it all goes with the granting of the license.
Okay, so you feel that there would be benefit in something that the restaurant specifically went a step further and looking after coaches parking outside.
Instead of traffic take an hour to come and the coach is gone. So there needs to be something that we can actually say, you have to move. And I agree with David that it takes up a lot of our time.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councillor Mason?
No questions, Chair.
Brilliant. I think you're probably as good a person to answer this for the sake of the panel as anything. If you could sort of estimate how wide the pavement is, how wide would you say that the pavement outside the Regency is?
4 foot.
I'd say probably 4 foot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would be a bit more generous, maybe, but you're on the right. Yeah, I think I would go. So David, go on.
Yeah, well, from the it's probably about 6 feet, maybe 7 feet wide.
Somewhere between 4 and 6.
I mean, I was a contractor, so I'm pretty sure it's right around 6 or 7 feet. So.
Okay. But the point is that it's quite a narrow stretch, isn't it? I think we established through that question that it's not a particularly wide piece of pavement. Okay, Councillor Mason, go on.
I was just going to say, I mean, I've looked at the plans and from my reckoning, there's parking behind the Regency, and I just want to clarify, is that parking for residents or is that part of the Regency complex? You might know Councillor Norman better than me, but yeah, the map I've got shows parking behind it. And I suppose one question was going to be to the residents, I suppose, is there somewhere else you think smoking could be taking place that would have less of an impact on residents? The plan I've got is on 63.
I was going to say, Louise, are you happy to answer that?
Yes, the could go around the back of the premises.
And again, I suppose it's balancing that, isn't it? If I suppose if they're smoking on the front of the road, hopefully it's relatively far away. If we put a conditional about smoking around the back, if it was out at 2 in the morning,
if they go around the back, then yes, that's near my bedroom is at the back.
That's what I was thinking. Is there a kind of, you know, any other location that might work better? But
side of it where the drive is, but then could get run over then by the people leaving the car park.
What about the I don't know if you're looking at the plan, but if we're looking at the plan as if you're looking at the building, you know, looking at the front of it, round to the left, obviously there's then a little car park there as well, isn't there? If my recollection's right. I mean, would that be a better spot for them to smoke along the side of the building?
I think that's more a question for Mr. Sylvester or Mr.
Yeah, probably,
because that's their side of the building.
Yeah.
I suggest.
No, that's our side of the building, I think.
Have we got a plan, Chair, we could put up on the screen maybe? I'm sure I saw it on the computer pack, but I can't find it in my actual
if you
pack.
were looking at the building to your right.
Yeah, if you're looking to the building to your right, that's the side with the
park
that we're talking about with Louise, and if you're looking to the left, that's the side we're looking at with.
If you're looking to the left, that's our car park for 12 to 14 Barbican Road and 1 to 4 Lawrence Court.
Yeah, there is a plan at page 63. I don't know if IT would be able to screen share that.
I was thinking, is there a map plan? You know, like on the website, we did publish a kind of
140, page 141.
Can we put that one up, please? That's what I was after.
Yeah, it's Richard here. Yeah, Lawrence is ready to share. I think he had page 63 ready, but I think you can.
Yeah.
Apologies, Lawrence.
141 would be better if possible.
141 would be exceptional if that is possible.
Okay, just bear with me a moment.
Thanks. Thank you, Lawrence.
One 141, you said?
Yes, please.
Sorry, which supplement was this in?
This is 141 of the main pack, I think.
The main one, okay.
Yeah.
The only one online goes to 126.
Is there a difference between the pink paper pack and the non-pink paper pack?
It was when I looked at it on the website, Lawrence, you could look at the map independent. You know, when you look at all the different attachments and things, there was one that was something like plan or a locality plan or something. What's it before? It's before mandatory conditions.
We have found it. Look at that. That is exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Councillor Mason, go on. What were you going to ask and say?
Yes. So this I'm pointing it with my mouse, but obviously no one can see that. But as you look at it to the kind of the top, it's not a very good definition, is it? But yeah, if you look at the kind of diagonal lines going up, the kind of middle diagonal line, there's obviously that kind of, it's almost like a little alcove, isn't it?
The line on the building.
Yeah, yeah. So you just go to a bit up, Lawrence. There's like a little alcove. I'm calling it an alcove. There's a little space. Yeah, there. And I wondered, what is that land? Could it be, you know, is it owned by 16 Barbican Road? You know, is there any feasibility of doing anything there, screening it, you know, putting a booth in or something where smoking could maybe be done in a better manner?
That is right outside my kitchen window.
Okay. So we don't want them smoking there?
No, thanks.
Okay, and if we look around the rear of the building, there's obviously, where your mouse is now, there's obviously a fair amount of space between that and the next building compared to where it would have been to your building. I just wondered, maybe it's for all of you ready to comment, but would it be better for us to put or ask for a designated area around the back where it would be totally, out of sight and away from, or further away from buildings?
No, that's no bedroom there. That.
Do you see where the mouse is?
Yeah. I guess that could be an area, but as I say, that drive is very narrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it could be. But that is the back of the restaurant where the chefs are and everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Mason, if I've just butt in at this stage, I genuinely don't know what my client's position is on the practicality of that area. Mr. Koay, you see the area to the rear there, where the arrow is. Can you see it? Mr. Koay, can you hear me? You're on mute.
Yes.
You see that area? I'm very grateful for the assistance here that's been shown. That you see that area there.
Yes.
Would that be possible for that to be the smoking area?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can set there for smoking areas. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. It might be something we can look at delegating later on. I just think that the theme I'm getting here is coaches and smoking are two significant things. So,
let me say this, if I may, at this stage, Councillor Mason. I know we're slightly out of order, but obviously we're here to try and sort things out if we can in any way. Certainly, I can give an undertaking now that smoking will form part of the noise management plan. I'll give that undertaking now, so that is considered, and the coaches as well, so that they will be. And what I'll do, I'll email John Golightly tomorrow morning. Should you be minded to grant the application, or should you be minded to grant the application, upon receipt of that, I will email John Golightly and just say that we agreed that at the hearing, just so it's formalised, if that assists in any way.
Yeah, I think we'd probably look at building it into the conditions if we were to grant it.
Very well.
Thank you. That's everything. Thank you for doing that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. Slightly out of order, as said, in various bits, but I think we muddled through and had some good conversation off the back of that, hopefully. So thank you for your patience. In that instance, I think we have gone around all the representatives, have we not? Unless I've completely done my bit. So now we go back, basically, through everybody and ask if you have any closing comments or remarks. And the representative, no, the applicant has the opportunity to go last in that, is my understanding. Victoria, sorry, have I gone wrong?
No, you haven't. I was just about to remind you, Chair, that it is the applicant that goes last.
Oh,
of this section.
We're already on this one. It's excellent. Thank you very much, Victoria. So yes, in that case, and I do apologise for how this works because it does make it slightly awkward, doesn't it, really? But do you have any comments in summary, Louise Patterson?
No, I think we've covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sylvester, do you have any further?
No, I think we've covered just about everything. I'll think of it when the meeting's done.
Sod's law. Hopefully we've been as comprehensive as possible. I do hope. Paul Godwin, do you have any other comments to make?
No, just well, I mean, we've talked about the smoking in the coaches, but just another big issue is the noise at closing time as people are leaving. So we can't forget about that. So that's it.
Thank you for that and keeping that in mind. And the applicant, would you wish to make any comments in closing?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to take a little bit longer than the objectors, but principally to deal with the issues that they've raised. Actually, obviously. Just dealing, first of all, there is actually a condition that relates to the sale of food. There's at page 83, North Yorkshire Police have said the condition, the premises shall operate as a restaurant and karaoke bar, not as a vertical drinking establishment. So that effectively replicates the previous condition, but that was suggested by North Yorkshire Police. I want the residents to know that the conditions on here are enforceable. They are properly worded and more comprehensive than was there before, particularly in respect of coaches, for example. There was nothing relating to that. And it will fall upon Ms. Koay, assuming the license is granted, to make sure those conditions are complied with. And if you feel he's not, well, you know the steps that you can take in order to address that. Conscious of the smoking and the coaches, and look, this process is also about people, as well as talking, but being able to listen. And I'm hoping that this has been a useful exercise for everybody, should the license be granted, that there's an open dialogue. And please, can everybody try and remember that the previous license was revoked due to poor management. And I'm hoping that my job is to put my client's case across. He's got a good track record. He's worked with the responsible authorities. He's come up with the dispersals policy, for example. And so we'll just make that point that a more responsible operator running these premises is going to much more purposefully tackle the concerns that these residents have, and hopefully reach an accommodation between each other, that where they can both coexist in a way that means that they're both satisfied with the situation. So I just make all those points, and I don't need to reiterate all the other points. This will be a very comprehensively conditioned license should you grant it, and for all those reasons, I commend it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we have opportunity for final points and clarifications. I think worth stressing at this point that nothing new should come up in this section, and that this should just be an opportunity for us, predominantly if we were minded to grant with additional conditions. None of those should be surprises to any party. So if you have thoughts on any of those, then now is the opportunity to make them plain. Councillor Mason, I see you're keenly.
Just noting the comment there from Mrs. Patterson, and probably one for our legal advisor, that the applicant said that he isn't going to live there, that no staff will live there. Can you condition a licensed premise so it isn't a residential property, if that takes away some concern that residents have?
If I could answer that from a legal point of view, I've never been asked that question before.
Okay.
Typical lawyer's answer, it will be possibly. I mean, one of the things I frequently get them with off licenses where there's been some shenanigans going on with dodgy booze or fags, and there's then a condition that the person won't be involved in the management of the premises, and that's perfectly lawful, absolutely, or carrying on of licensable activities. I've had situations where they own the property, and in those circumstances, and I don't know what the situation is here, where there's been attempts to exclude them from the property, and I'm being asked to answer a question on the hoof here. My gut feeling is probably it doesn't touch closely enough upon licensable activities for it to be enforceable, is my gut feeling. But I know, Victoria, I know what your thoughts are on that.
I suppose one bit where I'm trying to get to, I suppose, really is there's obviously concern about the history and the operation and the management, and it's obviously, with that comment there about previous owners still living there, it's, there maybe would be a natural doubt and concern that interferes with the current or the new operating style.
Can I just check, Councillor Mason, that I understand exactly what you're asking?
Yeah.
Are you asking whether or not you can license a requirement for someone to be residential on site, or whether or not you want to condition for the license holder to live on site? Is that?
I suppose the opposite. Can you condition it so nobody lives there? If that's I suppose so. I don't know if you saw the comments, but Louise had mentioned that the previous owners are living there. Obviously, that I can imagine the doubt that would then throw into about pressure on the current owner and how that might affect operating style. And obviously, we've heard that no staff are going to be staying there from the applicant, and that he isn't going to live there. So it was just whether that you can have a condition that nobody lives there.
I'm with Mr. Craig on this. I don't think we can.
Thank you. I just thought we'd explore it, given that that comment.
I'm quite happy to look into it. I'm a bit like Mr. Craig. I'm scratching my head.
Yeah.
Virtually.
I suppose, like you said, I think the point, I suppose, really is they don't want the bad influences coming through if a new license was granted. I think that's probably a fair way to say it.
But the conditions have to address licensable activity, and it's what the licensable activity would be that you would be attaching the condition to or addressing with the condition.
Yeah.
I see your hand, Councillor Pearson, but I also see Leslie has. Do you want to come in with a contribution from a licensing position?
I was just going to basically say exactly what Victoria has just said. I can't see how you could put sleeping as a licensable activity. I know it's a licensed premises, but sleeping is not a licensable activity. So I think we might be pushed a condition on that particular point.
Thanks. Councillor Pearson, was your question on this, or is it just a general?
I'm just looking at the plans. I can't see any actual habitable rooms, sort of living rooms. So how could anyone live here?
Just to interject again, members, I've visited this premises on a couple of occasions, and the previous operator turned the karaoke rooms into bedrooms.
Right.
For staff. So that's just so you're aware.
If you observe the plan on page 63, Councillor Pearson, you will note that there is an area on the second floor that is demarked as private quarters that is not properly mapped, if that answers your question about habitable quarters.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, perhaps we could say that the karaoke rooms are to remain as entertainment rooms and not as living or habitable rooms, as per the plans.
My gut feeling is that probably is okay. I mean, what I've not got the benefit of here, I'm afraid, I printed this off on black and white, and I don't have a red line. Where does the red line extend to?
I think that's a very good point, and I would also point, I think this is probably a moment to move on, because I think we've kind of got an answer here, but I would point that because it's not on, private quarters are not actually on the plan, they are not subject to the license, are they?
No.
You're not applying for a license for that part of the building.
Correct.
So
yeah,
we have no jurisdiction over that whatsoever in this meeting.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you could probably put a condition on there that the licensable area is but that's implicit in the grant of the license anyway. So it would actually be OTOs that would. So I don't think there's anything we can. I'm afraid.
Councillor Mason, do you have any further points of clarification that you wish to seek?
I suppose again, you've touched on the operating model and it being kind of geared towards students, maybe staying there or not staying there, using the premises later in an evening. You know, if we were looking to address some of the concerns around opening time and dispersal, would it be that actually during the week you could accept a slightly earlier closing, maybe say for a student night, you know, Wednesday or whatever it would be? Just trying to find that balance between, you know, not causing too much disturbance constantly for residents with later finishes.
I don't know, Mr. Walker, would you be able to take instructions on that point? Have you taken instructions on that point?
Not specifically, but my instructions, insofar as I have them, is that this is a 7-day-a-week business. Friday and Saturday is busier, but it is a 7-day-a-week business, and the applicant will be reluctant to see any substantial changing in the hours.
Thank you.
You anything further, Councillor Mason? Councillor Pearson, do you have any points of clarity at this point? Things to raise?
Just to double check around the flexibility on the licensed hours, really, with the applicant, and whether there's any give or take with the hours applied for.
Mr. Walker, you've been in closer contact with them than I have.
Well, obviously, it's ultimately a matter for adjudication on. I think clearly, if push came to shove and you are mindful to grant the license with slightly shorter hours, then perhaps the hours during the week might be reduced if absolutely necessary, but as little as possible. My express instructions are that if the hours are substantially reduced on any of the nights, it's going to make the business hard to sustain. The essence of the business is that it gives people an opportunity to go somewhere after other places have shut. And if the hours are reduced to any great extent, it reduces the financial viability of the business model.
Particularly, I might add, given the stringent requirements in regards to door staff and staffing more generally, it's a big undertaking from that perspective, and clearly those individuals as well are geared towards ensuring the people's safety as well. So that there has to be. Councillor Mason's got his hand up. Sorry.
That's what I was going to say. I'm going to bring in Councillor Mason. Go on.
I was just going to say, has there ever been any door staff before or anything similar? Because I can't imagine there would have been in the past.
I'll look at the.
Go on, Louise.
Before they did say that there was a condition of door staff, and they never turned up at all.
Right. Okay. Well, again, I reiterate the point that my clients are much more responsible operator than the previous people were, and so to that extent, I would just make that point that he will
take that. And Mr. Walker, go on.
Yes,
briefly.
Just to say that my client has actually signed a contract this week for proper door staff. He accepts from what he's been told that the door staffing in the past hasn't been consistent, as has just been stated. But as I've said, he's taking this very seriously, and I actually have a copy of a contract that he's signed for professional door staff going forward, and they will be on the door after 11 o'clock, and there's going to be no entry after midnight. So his earnest hope is that by taking that matter seriously, he addresses concerns on that point.
And that does, and that absolutely touches upon public nuisance, because contained within the dispersals policy is the
I think we can take which section of it falls within. Councillor Mason, I see you've unmuted again. Was there a further point there?
No, I don't think so, and I'm sure you would offer this reassurance to the residents, Chair, that even if this licence is granted, there is a significant history and it will be under a lot of scrutiny.
I think that's a very good point to make, and obviously, we'll come on to that in a sec. Anything further, Councillor Pearce?
Can I just respond to that? The applicant is well aware of that. He's well aware of that.
Yeah, I think we've made that clear throughout. Go on, Councillor Pearson. Anything further?
No, nothing from me. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Cool. Thanks. I will briefly have a couple of points of clarification. You just sort of clarify with the applicant that some form of condition about having a proper smoking area that isn't just sort of quite a small pavement would be something that we would welcome.
Yes, absolutely. My client's made it clear he's perfectly happy for that new suggested area, and again, I reiterate the point. He doesn't want to be upsetting the neighbours, because that's not going to do him any good long term.
Yeah, thank you. And Leslie, apologies to come to you, but could we had a sort of a kind of point from a neighbouring resident about concerns about how enforceable the conditions that have been presented are. In your opinion, from a licensing perspective, are these conditions ones that are enforceable?
The conditions that have, of course, been agreed by the police and public protection are enforceable, and I don't think anything that you've suggested between yourselves today is unenforceable. So yes, I think they're quite good conditions, Chair.
Okay, and I guess I think kind of part of my thought is that I do think some of the stuff we've discussed potentially has the opportunity to fall outside of being a licensable activity that would have the potential to undermine it from a licensing enforcement perspective, wouldn't it?
It could. They as some of the concerns are regarding the coaches, but the coaches are connected to the licensed premises. They're only in that specific area due to the licensed premises. So I think that the applicant does have a duty to make sure those coaches act accordingly. The drivers that they do literally just drop off and then go away. The parties can easily ring drivers to say, we're ready to be picked up now, can you come back for us? So there is a duty on the applicant to make sure that those type of things do happen.
And for what it's worth, I agree.
Okay, that's useful to hear and have on record. Okay, I don't have anything further to add. Leslie, do we have any points of policy clarity from a licensing perspective?
Not for this particular application. As I said earlier, it's not within the cumulative impact assessment area. Of course, you do have to take our policy into consideration when you're making your decision. Just while the meetings have been going on, I've been doing some checking with regards to Councillor Pearson's earlier question, and the premises, the licensed premises round the corner on Lowther Street, I was very good with my guess. They are licensed until either 1 or 2 a.m.
That is Lawrence Street.
Lawrence Street, yes.
That's right. Victoria, do you have any points of legal clarity?
Yes, I'd just like one clarity. I apologise to Mr Craig, he might well have addressed this earlier. In relation to the dispersal policy that's in Agenda Supplement 2, what I'm not clear about is whether or not this has been seen by and agreed by North Yorkshire Police and or Public Protection. It doesn't say that it has been on it, so I just wanted you to clarify that, or whether it's been submitted in isolation of those two bodies.
It was submitted in isolation. I tried to get in touch with John Golightly, only managed to speak to him 45 minutes before the hearing. I then forwarded it to him, but I didn't get any comment back, and I haven't involved North Yorkshire Police in that process. But certainly he said he welcomed the noise management plan in terms of its concept, the concept of it.
I was going to say, if I can briefly come in there, Mr. Craig, I think earlier you said that he had welcomed the noise management plan. He had welcomed the concept of the noise management plan,
his words to me. Well, I didn't say he'd read it. He didn't say he'd approved it.
Okay.
But he did welcome it. He absolutely said to me, that something along the phone. So that's great. That's really good. Can you send it over to me, please? I did send it over to him, and he also approved of the condition that I suggested as well.
Thank you. So it's been seen by Public Protection, but not seen by North Yorkshire Police.
Correct.
Can I just check with our Democratic Officer Ange if there's any other feedback that's come in from Public Protection or Police since it was published on the website in terms of Agenda Supplement 2, just in case there's anything that's come in that way that the committee haven't heard?
There's been no feedback other than from Michael Golightly in Public Protection, who has confirmed with me that he's had sight of the dispersal policy.
Thank you. I've nothing else to add, members. Thank you.
Sorry, I called him John Golightly before. I apologise for that. But can I just add this? I'm more than happy to liaise with him. If he's got any observations on that dispersals policy, I'm more than happy to liaise with him on that. Should the licence be granted? No issue with that at all.
Absolutely appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of implicit, isn't it, really? But yeah,
thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Victoria, for that. That's appreciated. In which case, I think we now will retire as a committee to make our decision, and we will seek to notify everybody involved as quickly as possible as to the decision we've made. Usually, I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Ange, but usually we send out a preliminary note of the decision, and then we'll subsequently send out a formal notice of the reasons for that decision.
We will.
Accurate. So you should hear as soon as we are able to do that. So without further ado, then I shall declare the meeting adjourned for private session. And thank you very much, everybody, for your participation today. It's been hugely appreciated. I hope you have felt able to express your views. Sorry, Louise. Hello? No. Okay, well, in that case, yeah, and a big thank you to everybody involved, including our technical team and all officers who've helped out. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.